So I do enjoy the series Monsters. I went ahead and watched the one of the Menendez brothers. I watched the one of Jeffrey Dahmer. Here we got Monsters, the Ed Gein story. It's the Netflix special. And I was like, okay, I enjoyed the Jeffrey Dahmer one. I really enjoyed the Menendez brothers one. The accuracy and all that stuff is not what I'm talking about, right? Especially when it came to the Menendez brothers. But I was like, okay, I was waiting for this one to drop. It is what, 8 episodes. And I went ahead and I binge watched it in 2 days. Now, I have seen some documentaries of Ed Gein before. It's a little bit different than other serial killer documentaries simply because his is way back in the day. Um, but I'll get to that in a second. So, all right. This series came out this year. It is on Netflix only. Let's get to Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes has this at 21%. The person who plays Ed Gein is Charlie Hunnam. Yes, Charlie Hunnam. You will mainly know him as Jax from Sons of Anarchy. Yes, Jax, the main character from Sons of Anarchy. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get to my thoughts on this. Okay, so I went ahead and I watched like the first three, 4 episodes in the first day. And look, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, man. Look, there's gonna be a little bit of spoiler alerts here, or a little bit of spoilers. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. After watching like the first three, 4 episodes, I was kind of thinking like, should I even finish this? It was so underwhelming, like extremely underwhelming. I was not enjoying it. It was boring. I wasn't getting anything out of it. There were very few things that were going on. It never really goes back into like his childhood. There are little small little pieces of scenes, and I can't even tell you in what episode where it shows him as a little kid, but for the most part, the show basically starts as him already as a young man, um, living with his mother and his brother coming to warn him, like, hey, listen, bro, you got to get out of here, man. Mom, she's sick. She's not well in the head, and she's making you weird. And definitely by watching the show, you could tell um, the mom, there was something really off with her, right? She is one of these abusers of the Bible, right? Like everything with sex, everything that is sexual, everything like that. You know, she was. You could tell something was completely off with her. Um, there is a little bit that shows his dad, just a very small scene that kind of shows you, what happened. But for the most part, she was like overly um protective and strict on Ed Gein when it came to females, which really sparked his curiosity even more. You know, that's basically all it really did because she was telling them, it's all that is complete sin. You're never gonna touch a woman. A woman's never gonna touch you. You're never gonna have any contact with a woman. And that just really kind of made him go in this weird off direction, right? Eventually, he was well, I'll get to that in a second. One thing that did not help Ed Gein was a neighbor of his, um, female, right? Not a bad looking girl either, that he really liked. And guess what? She was into some pretty weird stuff as well. She was into death. She was into, seeing blood and she was into that stuff. She was into gore. And they lived in a small town. I believe it was in Wisconsin. I believe. I don't even really remember at this point. And that didn't help. But at that time, in those years, the year like like the 40s and everything, seeing pictures of bodies and things like that, it was pretty gruesome. You didn't really see that stuff. Today is a lot different, right? I mean, heck, I remember when I was a little kid watching like Faces of Death, and people are like, well, hey, that was scripted. It was like, yeah, but it was still pretty shocking. You didn't see that back then, but he really got, she was really getting like pictures and things of that nature of what was going on over there in World War II. And there was this lady that she was a Nazi, and what she would do to the Jews and how she would treat the Jews and everything of that sort. And she would give it to Ed Gein, right? Because she was into it as well. She'd give it to Ed Gein, and he'd get turned on and he'd fantasize about it, man. And it really started messing with his head, fast forwarding to turning him into this complete weirdo, man, wanting to try on women's clothing and eventually he started digging up graves and he started hearing voices. Once his mom passed away, he started hearing his mom's voice. He started picturing his mom being there at the house. And, there was a lot going on in this documentary, right? And to me, some of it didn't make sense. Now, I don't want to make it seem like, hey, it didn't make sense. Like, whoa, he's just too weird. Like, no, it just didn't make sense that he was telling everybody like, oh, mother, she's upstairs, she's not feeling well. And it's such a small town. They had the funeral. Did nobody stop to think to tell him like, hey, Ed, your mom is dead and she's been dead? Like, they just allowed him just talk like that and just be weird, and then he'd be calling out for his mom like, hey, mom, the police are here, or anybody. It's like nobody is going to say to him like, Ed, I know this is tough, but your mom, she's not with us, man. Like, I always found that kind of strange, like just watching it. I get it. It was a different time, and maybe they're just letting him just, kind of that maybe they're thinking that he's grieving in that way, that make believing that she's still alive. All the graves that he dug up, like nobody thought to, hey, let's go ahead, let's stake out and see who's digging up these graves. Like, it was just kind of off for me. There was certain things that just, to me, I was just kind of like, huh, okay, this could be kind of solved pretty quickly. But nonetheless, it was very slow, very, I understand what they were trying to do. Okay. I understand that it was a slow buildup to how he became what he became, right? But like I said, it didn't start in his childhood, which I thought that's where it was going to start. I thought I was going to get like, okay, let me see. There had to be some sort of like huge abuse going on. And you didn't really get that. You just kind of got his mom that was kind of just weird and off and strict. And he was very soft spoken and timid. And he was just kind of strange. And, he masturbate while kind of like hanging himself, like choking himself, right? And just seeing him, I'm not gonna lie. Look, where there's some off parts where I'm like, oh gosh, man. Yeah, there were, but I understand. It's like, okay, well, we need to show you what he was all about, and seeing him, in women pantyhose dancing around, or all this other nonsense. It was just kind of like, yeah, it was a little uncomfortable to see. But that's not even what I'm really talking about. I'm just talking about the story itself was just very slow, very off. The scene. Well, let's go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's get to everything that he inspired, right? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the movie Psycho, a lot of these old school movies that were inspired because of Ed Gein, right? His story once he got busted and everything. But that's what I'm saying. It got frustrating to me because throughout the episodes, they would switch like to the 70s or something, and they would show like this movie getting made, right? And they'll be like, yeah, man, because of this guy, Ed Gein. And it's like, okay, it kind of throws me off a little bit because you guys just fast forward, you got away from the Ed Gein stuff. I understand that they're trying to say, like, hey, listen, Ed Gein went ahead and inspired to make this movie. I understand that. To me, I would have done it much differently. Okay, I would have done it. The way they did it wasn't the way I would have gone about it. On just random episodes, just like in the middle of nothing, where it's like, wait, you're still telling the story of Ed Gein. Like, why would you go ahead and throw this out there? You know? Um, so that was kind of off for me. What I did enjoy, okay, what I did enjoy. So, like I said, after the first three, four episodes, I was like, man, I'm not even sure if I even really want to finish watching this. Kind of feel like I'm wasting my time. Then we get to episode five, six. All right. I think he got busted. I think he got caught. Again, spoiler alert here. I think he actually got caught in episode six or seven. I'm not even really sure. That is when I thought it started getting good. The last two episodes, especially the very last episode, when it started linking up to all the serial killers that we've come to know, the Ted Bundys, all these other weird individuals that turn into serial killers, and how they were all inspired by Ed Gein. And it just, he was in this mental institution. And that's where I really connected with the story, with him struggling and trying to find out like what is wrong with me, and then when he gets the radios and he sends two of the radios, one to a transsexual and then one to that chick that he always fantasized about from World War II, the Nazi chick who, he really admired her work. Like what came out to be of that, I don't want to spoil it for you, but what came out to be with that little part right there between that and what the doctor had told them in the mental institution, I was like, wow, like that, I thought that was pretty strong and powerful. And then him figuring out, like, yeah, you know what? Like, it's trying, like, finding himself, figuring out that it was wrong, what he was doing, and what he doesn't want to do anymore. The chick that he had a crush on, I'll tell you this, man, I really thought I believed in her, right? I was kind of on board, like, hey, man, I didn't know there was a love interest for him. I had no idea. But I was like, hey, that'd be cool, man. They'll be a beautiful couple. They'll be a beautiful couple. You know what I mean? Because they're both sick and twisted. Kind of like a Mickey and Mallory kind of thing. Hey, this is actually pretty cool. And then it shows her being a complete hood rat. And I'm like, man, damn all this. This Hannah's dirty, dog. You know what, Ed Gein, you're too good for her, homie. Move on, dog. The heck with this girl. And yeah, that just kind of ruined it for me. And for me, I was not satisfied with her story. After that, after seeing that she was just a hood rat, see, I thought she was like with Ed Gein. I thought she felt about Ed Gein the way he felt about her. Again, I'm spoiling that. But once I saw that she's just a hood rat, I was just like, man, you know what? I want this girl to go down like hard in this freaking series. But I'm not gonna spoil it anymore. I'm just gonna say I wasn't satisfied on her story on it afterwards because I was rooting for her because I was rooting for them together as a loving couple. But once that happened, I'm like, man, damn all this. Anyway, that's when I connected with the story. When he's in the hospital, he's aging, he's getting older, and seeing all these other serial killers and how much they looked up to him and how much they loved his work. and they would write him because he was an OG in this. He's like the original serial killer. Were there serial killers before Ed Gein? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? But he was the first one that kind of coined the phrase serial killer. All these other guys that came around, in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s, they all kind of had like this kind of connection and story with Ed Gein. Like to them, he was their OG. He was the guy that they kind of all looked up to. And I like the way this connected with that, right? And some of them was like some straight weirdos, dog, like straight weirdos. That dude that had a pair of tits that was in prison, like some of these dudes were straight weirdos, but they looked up to Ed Gein. And even though I'm not gonna say he was 100% recovered, but he was more sane at one point towards the end of his life. And he would still receive letters, and they tell him like, hey, you know what, like, I like your work, you're a hero of mine, and da da da, and all this disgusting stuff, man. And he never really like shined it off. Because he understood their mentality. And I didn't know that he played a part. Spoiler alert here. I didn't know he played a big part on taking down Ted Bundy. I had no idea. He started working with law enforcement. He was the guy that they would go to. And it's like, okay, look, Ed, this is what we got. We got this serial killer, and this serial killer does this, and this serial killer does that. And he would start working with law enforcement, man, to try to get some of these guys off the street. Not that he wanted anything bad to happen to the serial killers, because you could just see it in his heart that it's like, I sympathize with them because I know mentally they're not all there. But we do need to get them off the street because they're killing innocent people. And that part right there, I'm gonna tell you guys this because I know this is already getting very long. That made me appreciate the fact that I finished watching this series. So if you guys, most of the time, most of the time, you would watch a movie or a series, and the saying is like, "Oh man, great movie, but horrible ending." Okay, this is actually reverse because in reality, I didn't really care for the series. And as Rotten Tomatoes has it at 21%, that's probably where I would have it. However, because of the ending, I probably put it higher. So to me, this is a kind of a terrible to mediocre, below mediocre, series with a really good ending. That episode 7 and 6. I'm sorry, episode 7 and 8, especially 8. I just I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed. Was it worth sitting down and watching all the other episodes? Ah, my goodness. I mean, I can't even really tell you yes or no. I would just say that I really appreciate the ending, and I'm glad I went ahead and I stuck with it so I can see the ending of this. But leading up to it, yeah, I didn't enjoy it. It was pretty slow, it was pretty boring. It was I just yeah, I didn't like it. So, will I recommend it? I mean, look, it's up to you. Um, not too many people know too much about Ed Gein because it was a long time ago. But if you guys want to see, one of the OGs and serial killers, I mean, yeah, I guess go ahead, check it out. Um, the ending was really good. It did get a little bit weird here and there at the ending as well, but um, I, I don't know. I'll leave it to you guys if you guys want to go watch it or not. Um, and like I said, I'm not even talking about the weirdo stuff that takes place. You already know that going in. He's a serial killer. You know he's gonna do some weird things. You know he's gonna have sex with dead corpses. You know he's going to peel the skin off of women and wear them. You know he's going to be wearing pantyhose and bras and dancing around. You know all this already. So I knew all that going in. So that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the story. It wasn't fulfilling except for the end, whatever that means to you. That is Monsters, the Ed Gein story special on Netflix. Catch you guys on next one.